Welcome to the Therapist Book Club, where two therapists dive into their favorite books and the powerful mental health themes they uncover.
Whether you're here for literary inspiration, therapeutic tools, or just some lighthearted conversation, you've found the right place.
So get cozy and let's dive into the pages together.
All right, welcome back. We're here for another episode, and this time we have a thriller. This one is The Silent Patient. Oh, I don't have the author's name. Do you have it on hand?
I'll find it.
Let's see.
Alex Michaelides.
Yes.
It felt like what's her name? Frida.
It did.
It
Yeah.
felt like a Frida. I can't think of her last name, but everyone knows who I'm talking about now.
Something.
Oh yeah, you're right. I really while I was reading the entire book, I thought it was a Frida McFadden. to be
Okay, do you want to give a little synopsis?
Yeah, so this is about clearly about a silent patient. So a patient who, after it is believed a traumatic event or shooting and murdering her husband, Alicia goes silent. And she goes to a hospital, forensics hospital, where we meet our forensic psychotherapist. I imagine him being like an LCSW or something like that, because he's not a doctor. But he is convinced, and he's kind of famous for working with really hard cases and helping people that are really difficult or whatever his ego tells him. And he's convinced he can make her speak again, which would secure the truth behind the murder. And in the set, like, if you've ever, when people are found to have an insanity plea, I don't know if everybody realizes that they then go to a forensics hospital where they're either like brought back to their functioning level before the insanity or kept for their sentence. So innocent with a plea of insanity does not always mean they walk free. And being unable to stand trial due to mental health or cognitive levels or whatever, typically they'll go to a forensics hospital or the state, like in Utah, we have a state hospital. It has a forensics wing on it where people who are waiting for trial are being rehabilitated in a way so they can stand trial.
Or assessed for their ability to stand trial. Like, that's where they're going to determine, is this person capable of doing this? And if not, let's see what we can do to help them get to that.
And that's Theo's coming in to do that. So she's at this hospital to do. So there's a cast of characters that are all a little bit violent, like a little bit whatever, because this is a forensics hospital. And Theo decides that in order for Alicia to be rehabilitated, she needs to come down on her medication. And he uncovers essentially like a plot to keep everybody over medicated, and there's sharing medication and stealing medication and selling medication by the staff. But there's some big twists at the end. We'll leave that for the end because it's big spoilers. And
yeah, don't listen to this if you don't want a spoiler, because we cannot talk about this without spoiling.
Right. And we'll warn you where that comes in too. And so anyway, so as Theo dives in with Alicia, is trying to do therapy. She's violent with him at times. But she seems to want to work with him. She's writing in journals throughout all of this time. And in the end, we do find out what really happened with the murder.
So there are lots of things here related to mental health, and that's why we picked this book. So there are, I mean, the obvious, which is like a trauma response. So she witnesses this murder of her husband.
Mhm.
So that in and of itself is going to have some psychological damage to a person. I think there's also a tie to that like trauma that sometimes there is some selective mutism that comes with experiencing a trauma. Um, so the fact that she was silent was an interesting way of demonstrating or showing this deep level of trauma that she experienced. Have you ever worked with anyone with selective mutism?
I actually haven't. No.
I had one little boy that was selectively mute in school. He was at home very talkative and would talk a lot at home, but then at school he was completely mute. We uncovered that that was probably more related to like a separation anxiety type thing that, or like a social anxiety type thing that was kind of contributing to the mutism,
Mhm.
but it can happen after a traumatic experience too.
One thing about, this story is it brings in the Greek do you remember it's the painting? There's
Mm.
a Greek mythology in here about that comes into play, and I don't know, do you wanna go right off the bat with spoilers, or do you want me to save it?
Let's just do spoil it. Let's just jump into it. Because
Okay.
like I feel like the rest of the kind of the rest of the mental health themes are related to the spoilers, I feel like.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think there's a lot well, I'll hit those thoughts that I have first. Of the mental hospital, I'm like, I cannot tell you how many times I see people come out of the mental hospital over-medicated, and then it's a challenge to work through those side effects to decrease the medication, and sometimes coming off of medication is the answer. So it is possible when Theo saw Alicia and did an evaluation and assessment that like coming off of the medication could have reduced some of the symptoms that he was concerned about. That is true. And sometimes in the hospitals, what they do for quote unquote safety is they will amp up more and more medication until people are in kind of a zombie phase. They're not feeling, thinking, experiencing. But you cannot rehabilitate a person who can't think and process, right? In EMDR training, we often say like benzodiazepines are the number one medication that like we are not going to get benefit. It's the same for like our in our neurofeedback clinic. If we're on a benzo, that part of the brain that is impacted by that medication is the part that we need online to process and heal. So I thought part was I agreed with that.
Yeah.
I agreed with the that it's we're over medicated. I agree that the forensics hospitals um can feel like kind of a scary place sometimes, you know? Um definitely like I can't think of the character, but the one that was like large and big and she was scary. And like I think the other
And
residents were fearful of her.
when Alicia first came into the hospital, wasn't she pretty like aggressive and like
Mhm.
just because she had just experienced a trauma and didn't know like she was afraid. I would very much classify her response going into the
Yeah,
hospital that she was like a fearful.
totally. And I think that's what Theo picked up on, right? He was like, okay, right. So she did do that when she was coming in, and trauma can do that.
Mhm.
But now let's see.
Yeah.
Now she's been here for a while. Let's see if that still happens, which I, I thought that was actually a great thing. You know, I had a thought. So he talks to the psychiatrist who gets super bent out of shape that like, what, you're questioning me and what I'm doing. I have worked with those psychiatrists before.
Yeah.
I have worked closely with those psychiatrists before. I am not telling you how to do your job. I am telling you what I'm seeing in session, and I'm telling you with my own expertise in the realm that I work in. I can't do the work if they're on the benzos, or I can't do addiction recovery if they're for somebody who has a meth addiction if they're on Adderall. Like I just we it's not going to be as effective. So I thought that was an interesting response that I was like, "Yes, I've been there."
Well, and if you think about the purpose of the psychiatrist in the hospital is to keep everyone subdued and safe, really.
Mhm,
And so, of course, somebody else coming in to say, like, let's wean her off of these meds, that psychiatrist is going to be like, but then I can't do my job.
mhm.
And this could be potentially dangerous. So they're seeing, I mean, each professional is going to see everything from a unique lens, and there has to be collaboration to like do it in the safest possible way for
Yeah.
everybody.
Well, and think about it too, like, the psychiatrist is seeing them at their highest level of crisis coming in, and we're medicating to that level. But what happens when we do a little bit of treatment? Maybe some of that starts to trickle down a little bit. Now we're over medicated, right? And
There
so
also has to be a reassessment of meds. We
yeah,
should not be staying at the same dosage of meds forever.
totally. A- And if we are in the same dose, it should be something that we are actively like,
Yes.
yeah, assessing. So I really appreciated that portion of it. I didn't think he was wrong. I did think if my client attacked me the way she attacked him,
I would not be working with that client anymore.
it would have been so hard. And I was like, and this is why, like, males in our society are nurtured in different ways, females, right? Like we are nurtured to hold our keys a certain way when we're walking down a scary spot, right? Men are less afraid of some of those things because they are not nurtured to be afraid of that. We can go into the systemic reasons why we're nurtured in different ways or taught different things about the world, and it's maybe true or whatever. But I thought that was so interesting. Like for me and my safety, I I don't know that I could have done that. I could have gone in again. And remember, she came in with some restraints or something like that the next time, and he kind of worked with her like, "I'll take that off." And I was like, it did take kind of a I think it took a male, but then I did start thinking like, what about these boundaries of like, why is he so obsessed?
Well, so at first I was thinking he's just so cocky. He's got to prove to the world that he can crack this case. Like he's going to solve this one. It's the hardest one he's ever worked on, and he's going to be the one who does it. Like this cockiness of like I'm the best is where I was I think the author was wanting us to go
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
That's the character she was trying to portray or he was trying to portray.
And is that ethical or appropriate for boundaries, right? Like, so was he thinking about what was best for her? I don't know. That's just like thoughts that came to my mind, right? Like,
But I mean, if he is really the best of the best in the field, and if he can't help her, then who else can? So I could see where he would be like, I've got to stick it out because there's nobody as good as me.
well, what made him the best?
I don't remember what I
It was because he had worked on a case and had like rehabilitated somebody to stand trial. So what looked like the best was the outcome, but to me, I'm like, when he was discussing therapy and stuff, I was like, what skills is he using here? And if you're gonna write the best therapist out there, you need to do your research.
well, and okay, and also as a therapist am not doing the healing work that the client is doing. I am not the reason I am not the reason the client heals.
Yeah,
And I think he very much took that view of like he was the one who saved this other patient before. And so he's going to come in and save her.
yeah. That was one of the biggest learning lessons I had when I was working in addiction services. That I could do everything quote unquote right and be the best therapist I could be
Mhm.
or on the block, and somebody might still use.
Yep.
And so outcomes cannot be attached to whether we're good or bad as therapists. Just like as a society, we can't attach it that way. Like there are too many factors that go into that. Like I was working in a really small, kind of ruralish town that was, like had really high drug use in the population. Like I couldn't control some of the systemic factors. So I could do my very best and I did. And I think we planted lots of seeds and whatever, but I had to learn really quick. I could not attach whether I was a good therapist to the outcome. So that was one thing that I felt like they set up in that book that like our worth as therapists is just not connected to the outcome.
And I wonder if he kept showing up even after she assaulted him because he was trying to prove to the world or to himself or whoever that he was good enough or he was the best therapist.
There definitely was some boundary crossing, and I do feel like in forensics hospitals, who's reporting that? And if the clients reported it, would anybody believe them or care? I feel like it's like it's an extension almost of jail, right? So like if jail inmates complain, are people listening to them? Are they taking it seriously?
And then you add on the layer of how much medication they're on and how numbed out they are. Like,
Mhm.
are 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 they generally going to be believed, or are they just going to be thought to be imagining it?
Yeah.
Or yeah,
So, if you are somebody who has not read this book and you would like to, stop now.
they'll read it.
Yeah, you kinda heard some of that discussion. I think it's interesting. I'd love for other therapists to read this book and kind of read I thought it was great for thinking about these systems that we work in. How can I be an agent of change in this system? Like these patients here are very vulnerable. And so, yeah, am I and I've worked in a place before that I think didn't think as much about my safety as I think maybe they could have or should have. And being able to advocate for your safety is okay also. Like I don't want therapists to read this and think like, oh, you just have to show back up after they've assaulted you and do the work that they need, like I think it would have been okay. And I get he was saying like, how can we build rapport and trust if she's in shackles or whatever, restraints? I get that.
But
And
how can you do that? How can the agency you're working for make sure that is done in a safe way? Maybe there needs to be a separating wall between you and a violent client or patient so
mm,
that they cannot physically assault you, but you could potentially do some work.
right, I was like, I think those are questions that are a little bit higher than my typical pay grade
Yeah.
as
But systemic, I mean, that's all speaking to the system.
yeah. So I did think that was good. I think that's great. I want to go into why she's silent, and it's going to include spoilers. So turn it off now if you don't want the spoiler.
Yeah, let's go.
So I did some like googling about this book, and so he's on this quest. So he wants to find her journals. He realizes she's writing in journals. We start to realize that they
Side note, journaling can be a really great strategy as you're recovering from trauma to start, especially if you have like gaps in your memory. Journaling when you have dreams or when you have new insights, this is a really great technique. So, from a therapeutic perspective, also, I think really good that like he's paying attention to her journaling and like this is a good way for her to start healing.
yeah, he starts to become pretty obsessed with the journals. And turn it off now if you don't want the spoiler. But
Last warning.
yes, we find that they might know each other. We
Yeah.
don't know the whole truth of it, but there's a painting that they have like brought up throughout the story. And I looked it up because I just didn't know enough about it. And she she paints this painting, this final piece that she titles I don't know if I'm saying this right. It's Alcestis.
Oh, that's it.
Alcestis. But that is a Greek mythology name.
The
And
wife of Admetus.
yes, and this is about a woman who sacrifices herself for her husband, and it's a symbol of her. She does a sacrifice as a symbol of her own feelings of betrayal. I thought that was an interesting piece to weave in that I didn't know when I was reading it, but looking it up, I was like, "Whoa, that's a" if I had known that, I really would have been like, "Why is this thing being
Okay,
brought up?"
that's kind of interesting that the author tied that in because when I Googled him, he's Greek.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so he probably grew up maybe learning the
His
mythology.
father is Greek and his mother was English. Or
Okay. So we there's a spot where the book changes. So we end on this cliffhanger for a second that Alice or I'm sorry, Alicia Wright paints this painting and then is found overdosed in a coma. And then it's kind of a cliffhanger, right? And it switches POV all of a sudden. You remember this? It switched over to this POV of this like stalker. And so we find that Theo was stalking Alicia throughout the time outside of the hospital. And we find that he played a role in the murder of Alicia's husband. That during this time of stalking, he wanted to come in. Well, it gets all twisty turny here. Alicia's husband was having an affair with Theo's husband.
Theo's wife.
I'm sorry, wife. Yes, sorry. And in his like craze,
Yes.
he decides he wants to find out who this person is, decides on stalking.
Yes.
Stalks him for a while, and then he sees that they both are home. He enters the home to tell Alicia about this affair that's been going on. And it kind of goes wrong.
Go south.
It goes south, yes. And he has them tied up, both of them tied up, and he gives them choices. So he gives the husband a choice to kill Alicia, his wife. And or Alicia to kill the husband, right? That somebody's gonna die, whatever.
I think he just tells Alicia's husband, you have to kill her. And that's how
Yeah,
you can be free.
and he was kind of like okay with it.
Considering it. Yeah.
Yeah. He and that's Alicia. It starts this thought process in Alicia's brain of like,
Wait a minute.
and so he does leave, he leaves. I can't remember where he goes, but he leaves. And but he leaves the setup to where Alicia then
Kills her husband.
kills her husband. Yeah. And it yeah, no, it said instead of killing Gabriel, Theo gave Alicia the choice. He left her with a gun and walked away. And Alicia was left there feeling betrayed and hurt by this man who didn't do anything for him or protect him in this state of fear, and she shot him. And then after that, Alicia went silent and she didn't tell the story. I was just thinking about that, like Stockholm syndrome, that when Theo showed up, why didn't she just tell the story then? When the cops showed up, why didn't she tell the story then? And Theo has made her like, he has this power over her in a way, right? That like, and sometimes I think this is so when a child is being molested, why don't they just tell?
Yeah.
I think this is a similar concept, right?
Unless that mutism was at play. Like, was she not telling the story or was she not talking at all? Like, I don't think she was saying anything to
Yeah, I
anybody.
don't think she was saying anything, but I think there was some of it of like, okay, this man broke into your house, terrified you. You almost lost your life that day. Somehow he convinced you to kill your husband, to murder somebody,
So
right?
there may be some fear if I speak up, he will come hurt me.
He will hurt me. They will,
Not believe me.
well,
What?
yeah, they don't believe me. And even if they do believe me, then I have admitted guilt, right? Like he holds this control and power imbalance kind of over her. And I think that does go into why we don't speak up. Why do we stay silent? Like, sure, I think trauma can create the mutism, but I also think there was maybe some intentionality for her. They're like, so why don't we speak up? Like, who was going to believe her?
Yeah.
Like, and so ultimately, Alicia does write everything down in this journal, and that's what's used to bring Theo to justice.
Well,
It,
it also seemed like kind of going back to that idea of why didn't she say anything? I feel like the author made it seem like, I don't remember like seem like or if it was very obvious, but that she didn't really remember. Like there was some blackout stuff happen. Like she couldn't quite remember all the details. Do you
like
remember
that's
that?
what she says. I don't know. I think it's ambiguous, right? because somehow she writes this all down in her journal. She becomes, I think she becomes aware that Theo is circling her, right?
Yeah.
And she's stuck in this hospital
Yeah.
being
With him
retrained
being the
chemically.
authority. Yeah.
Yes, with this man who almost killed her once
Yeah.
and knows the true secret.
Yeah. She has to
So,
be very careful about what she says to who and when and
yeah.
where.
So they pick up all her stuff after, so she's in this coma, she's transported to the hospital, they're cleaning out her room, and they find the secret diaries in the back of this painting. Yeah, which I think is so, I think that's, it's so interesting. It's like a really fun literary piece that comes into play here of it's like this story, right? That
Yeah, so here's the myth. Here's the Greek myth. I just searched it up. So Alcestis, Alcestis, I don't know how to say that, was the wife of Admetus, a Greek king. When Admetus was fated to die, the gods allowed him to live if someone else would die in his place. Alcestis volunteered to die for her husband, a selfless act of love, but later Hercules went to the underworld and brought Alcestis back, saving her from death. So that's the myth.
mhm,
And then, so I guess the myth then mirrors Alicia's, like, she sacrificed herself
yeah.
emotionally.
Mhm. I know, I think that's such a cool thing that's like it's I would definitely say more obscure, but maybe it's just obscure to me, but it feels obscure, this myth.
Mhm.
And if we knew the story, we would like give it away.
Yeah.
You
We
know?
were familiar with this Greek myth.
Yeah. See, I thought that, I don't know. I thought it was super interesting. I did not see that plot twist coming.
Yeah.
The thing about Frida is I often do see her plot twists
Maybe.
coming,
Yes.
or they follow kind of a pattern. Like the housemaid ones, I'm like, I feel like those kind of follow patterns. And this one,
I can almost always pick up a book and start reading it and know it's a Frida book because it's always, I think it's almost always the same narrator as well.
yeah,
Like, oh no, here she comes again.
this one I think did a great job of like, I knew something weird was going to happen. I knew something weird was going to come out of it. And I felt like I knew he was going to tell me more about Theo, but this is not what I expected.
It was a huge, I think I remember reading this and being like, oh, no way.
Mhm. Again, I think it's a little like, I don't know how many people find out that their spouse is having an affair and then you begin to stalk them and then you show up but you happen to have a gun, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that this is like legit, but this is a good thriller to read. I think it's good. I would recommend it to therapists. I probably gave this a 4.5.
I gave it a 4.5 just for like the, um, what's the word? Like, just the story of it was just fun and a twisty, thrillery. I don't know that I'd rate it that high for a therapist.
I don't think it's
It's
a
too,
required reading. I wouldn't call it like it's not on my required therapist reading list. However, I think a therapist book club would read it and we would talk about like the forensics of it.
yeah.
Or if you were a therapist in your book club and you wanted to sound super cool to the other ladies in the book club, this is a good one
Yeah.
to discuss, to bring up those points of like the forensics hospital and things like that. But I thought it was a good thriller. I'll take it. I think it's a appropriate depiction of forensics hospitals. I think it's an appropriate depiction of medical chemical restraints,
Yeah.
and when those come out, people may not realize that those chemical restraint exists and is in use regularly in hospitals like this.
I
So
want this to be a movie. I would watch the movie. Well, maybe not now that I know the twist, but
I still would. I think it would, I'd be interested to see how they like play it all out.
it's true.
Who would you cast?
I don't know. I can never remember any celebrities.
You know the girl who plays Love on You?
Oh, uh-huh.
That's who I would cast for Alicia.
Oh, she would be good.
It would be good. The guy who plays You, like
Yeah.
he has his name on there, and he's also on Gossip Girl. I think he would be fantastic as the therapist.
I can picture somebody in my mind who I think would be good as a therapist, but I don't know who it is. And I can't even think of a movie he's in. I can just envision his face.
Yeah. But Joe from You, I feel like that leads to the, like, looking really put together on the outside, having a little ego, but then having this whole crazy backstory and being able to, like, live well, and I was like, how much does like, think of all the energy it takes to tolerate being in sessions with this girl, and you know, but you don't know that she knows. Like, I think he was in sessions with her trying to figure out what she knows.
Mhm.
So I'm like, how there's some sociopathy to that, that
Oh,
he could sit there
yes.
in those sessions and not, like, betray any of his feelings about, like, who he was and how he knew her.
Play it off. So cool.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but it does remember I'm like a comp person for that would be Joe from You. He can do that.
Yeah. Okay, Hollywood. Make this a movie.
Maybe it is, I don't know, we'd have to look that up, but that's who I would cast.
All right.
Okay, that's it
This
for
was a fun one. I hope you didn't hear any spoilers if you didn't want to hear any spoilers.
I hope you're not listening to this point if you didn't wanna hear spoilers.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us on the Therapist Book Club. We hope today's conversation inspired you to explore new stories and perspectives.
Don't forget to follow us for more episodes, share your favorite books with us, and join the conversation on how books and mental health connect on our social media channels.
Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, your story matters.